Hello dear friend, and welcome to On This Day SMR with me, Edward Hertz, where we take a look back through history at events which took place on this day. The rain is gently pittering and pattering away on the window, and the fire is crackling away nicely in the hearth. So put your headphones on, sit back, relax, and let me take you on a journey back through time. Today is Monday, the 4th of March 2024, and we have 73 events to cover, going all the way back to the year 51. Starting with the most recent event which happened 4 years ago, Nick Wallander becomes the first person to walk on the Messiah volcano in Nicaragua. 6 years ago in 2018, former MI6 spy Sergei Skripal and his daughter are poisoned with a Novichok nerve agent in Salisbury, England, causing a diplomatic uproar that results in mass expulsions of diplomats from all countries involved. 9 years ago in 2015, at least 34 miners died in a suspected gas explosion at the Zasyadko coal mine in the rebel-held Donetsk region of Ukraine. 12 years ago in 2012, a series of explosions is reported at a munitions dump in Brazzaville, the capital of the Republic of the Congo, killing at least 250 people. 15 years ago in 2009, the International Criminal Court issues an arrest warrant for Sudanese President Omar Hassan al-Bashir for war crimes and crimes against humanity in Darfur. Al-Bashir is the first sitting head of state to be indicted by the ICC since its establishment in 2002. "22 years ago in 2002, Afghanistan. 7 American Special Operations Forces soldiers and 200 Al-Qaeda fighters are killed as American forces attempt to infiltrate the Shah Ikot Valley on a low-flying helicopter reconnaissance mission. 23 years ago in 2001, the BBC bombing. A massive car bomb explodes in front of the BBC television centre in London, seriously injuring one person. The attack was attributed to the real IRA. 26 years ago in 1998, gay rights. On-Cale versus Sundown Offshore Services Incorporated. The Supreme Court of the United States rules that federal laws banning on-the-job sexual harassment also apply when both parties are the same sex. 28 years ago in 1996, a derailed train in Weyauwega, Wisconsin, USA, causes the emergency evacuation of 2,300 people for 16 days. 30 years ago in 1994, in the Space Shuttle program, the Space Shuttle Columbia is launched on STS-62. 34 years ago in 1990, American basketball player Hank Gavers dies after collapsing during the semi-finals of a West Coast Conference tournament game. In the same year, Lennox Sebe, President for life of the South African Bantustan of Ciskei, is ousted from power in a bloodless military coup led by Brigadier Upa Gokozo. 38 years ago in 1986, the Soviet Vega 1 begins returning images of Halley's Comet and the first images of its nucleus. 39 years ago in 1985, the Food and Drug Administration approves a blood test for HIV infection, used since then for screening all blood donations in the United States. 44 years ago in 1980, nationalist leader Robert Mugabe wins a sweeping election to become Zimbabwe's first black Prime Minister. 47 years ago in 1977, the 1977 Vrancia earthquake in Eastern and Southern Europe kills more than 1,500, mostly in Bucharest, Romania. 48 years ago in 1976, the Northern Ireland Constitutional Convention is formally dissolved in Northern Ireland, resulting in direct rule of Northern Ireland from London by the British Parliament. "54 years ago in 1970, French submarine Eurydice explodes underwater, resulting in the loss of the entire 57-man crew. 58 years ago in 1966, a Canadian Pacific Airlines DC-843 explodes on landing at Tokyo International Airport, killing 64 people. In the same year, in an interview in the London Evening Standard, the Beatles' John Lennon declares that the band is more popular than Jesus now. 62 years ago in 1962, a Caledonian Airways Douglas DC-7 crashes shortly after takeoff from Cameroon, killing 111, the worst crash of a DC-7. 64 years ago in 1960, the French freighter La Coubre explodes in Havana, Cuba, killing 100. 67 years ago in 1957, the S&P 500 stock market index is introduced, replacing the S&P 90. "69 years ago in 1955, an order to protect the endangered Saimar ringed seal, Pusa hispida saimensis, was legalized. 80 years ago in 1944, in World War II, after the success of Big Week, the US AAF begins a daylight bombing campaign of Berlin. 81 years ago in 1943, also in World War II, the Battle of the Bismarck Sea in the Southwest Pacific comes to an end. In the same year, also in World War II, the Battle of Fadi Kambos, one of the first major battles between the Greek resistance and the occupying Royal Italian Army, begins. It ends on the 6th of March with the surrender of the entire Italian battalion and the liberation of the town of Grevena. "83 years ago in 1941, again in World War II, the United Kingdom launches Operation Claymore on the Lofoten Islands, the first large-scale British commando raid. "91 years ago in 1933, Franklin D. Roosevelt becomes the 32nd President of the United States. He was the last president to be inaugurated on March the 4th. In the same year, Frances Perkins becomes United States Secretary of Labor, the first female member of the United States Cabinet. Also in the same year, the Parliament of Austria is suspended because of a quibble over procedure. Chancellor Engelbert Dollfuss initiates an authoritarian rule by decree. 107 years ago in 1917, Jeanette Rankin of Montana becomes the first female member of the United States House of Representatives. 111 years ago in 1913, in the First Balkan War, the Greek army engages the Turks at Bizani, resulting in victory 2 days later. In the same year, the United States Department of Labor is formed. 115 years ago in 1909, US President William Taft used what became known as the Saxby Fix, a mechanism to avoid the restriction of the US Constitution's ineligibility clause to appoint Philander C. Knox as US Secretary of State. 116 years ago in 1908, the Collinwood School Fire, Collinwood near Cleveland, Ohio, kills 174 people. 123 years ago in 1901, McKinley inaugurated president for a second time. Theodore Roosevelt is vice president. 125 years ago in 1899, Cyclone Mahina sweeps in north of Cooktown, Queensland, with a 12-metre or 39-foot wave that reaches up to 5 kilometres or 3.1 miles inland, killing over 300. 134 years ago in 1890, the longest bridge in Great Britain, the Forth Bridge in Scotland, measuring 8,094 feet, or 2,467 metres long, is opened by the Duke of Rothesay, later King Edward VII. 142 years ago in 1882, Britain's first electric trams run in East London. 146 years ago in 1878, Pope Leo XIII re-establishes the Catholic Church in Scotland, recreating sees and naming bishops for the first time since 1603. 159 years ago in 1865, the third and final national flag of the Confederate States of America is adopted by the Confederate Congress. In the same year, US politician Andrew Johnson made his drunk vice presidential inaugural address in Washington, D.C. 163 years ago in 1861, the first national flag of the Confederate States of America, the Stars and Bars, is adopted. 175 years ago in 1849, President-elect of the United States Zachary Taylor and Vice President-elect Millard Fillmore did not take their respective oaths of office, though they did so the following day, leading to the erroneous theory that outgoing President pro tempore of the United States Senate, David Rice Atchison, had assumed the role of acting president for one day. "176 years ago in 1848, Carlo Alberto di Savoia signs the Statuto Albertino that will later represent the first constitution of the Regno d'Italia. 187 years ago in 1837, the city of Chicago is incorporated. 210 years ago in 1814, Americans defeat British forces at the Battle of Longwood between London, Ontario and Thamesville, near present-day Wardsville, Ontario. 211 years ago in 1813, Cyril VI of Constantinople is elected Ecumenical Patriarch of Constantinople. 220 years ago in 1804, Castle Hill Rebellion. Irish convicts rebel against British colonial authority in the colony of New South Wales. 227 years ago in 1797, John Adams is inaugurated as the second President of the United States of America, becoming the first president to begin his presidency on March the 4th. 230 years ago in 1794, the 11th Amendment to the US Constitution is passed by the US Congress. 233 years ago in 1791, Vermont is admitted to the United States as the 14th state. 234 years ago in 1790, France is divided into 83 departments, cutting across the former provinces in an attempt to dislodge regional loyalties based on ownership of land by the nobility. 235 years ago in 1789, in New York City, the first Congress of the United States meets, putting the United States Constitution into effect. 248 years ago in 1776, in the American Revolutionary War, the Continental Army fortifies Dorchester Heights with cannon, leading the British troops to abandon the siege of Boston. 255 years ago in 1769, Mozart departed Italy after the last of his 3 tours there. 343 years ago in 1681, Charles II grants a land charter to William Penn for the area that will later become Pennsylvania. 349 years ago in 1675, John Flamsteed is appointed the first Astronomer Royal of England. 359 years ago in 1665, English King Charles II declares war on the Netherlands, marking the start of the Second Anglo-Dutch War. 396 years ago in 1628, the Massachusetts Bay Colony is granted a royal charter. 505 years ago in 1519, Hernan Cortes arrives in Mexico in search of the Aztec civilization and its wealth. 531 years ago in 1493, explorer Christopher Columbus arrives back in Lisbon, Portugal, aboard his ship Nina, from his voyage to what are now the Bahamas and other islands in the Caribbean. 563 years ago in 1461, Wars of the Roses in England, Lancastrian King Henry VI is deposed by his House of York cousin, who then becomes King Edward IV. "638 years ago in 1386, Vladislav II Jagiello, or Jogaila, is crowned King of Poland. 673 years ago in 1351, Rama Fibode becomes King of Siam. 786 years ago in 1238, the Battle of the Sit River begins 2 centuries of Mongol horde domination of Russia. 872 years ago in 1152, Frederick Barbarossa is elected King of Germany. 1086 years ago in 938, Translation of the relics of Martyr Wenceslaus I, Duke of Bohemia, Prince of the Czechs. (1,172 years ago in 852), Croatian Knez Trpimir I issues a statute, a document with the first known written mention of the Croat's name in Croatian sources. (1,443 years ago in 581), Yang Jian declares himself emperor Wen of Su, ending the Northern Zhou and beginning the Su dynasty. (1,718 years ago in 306), martyrdom of Saint Adrian of Nicomedia. And 1,973 years ago in the year 51, Nero, later to become Roman Emperor, is given the title Princeps Juventatis, head of the youth. So that is all we have for today. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope that you found our little trip back through history both relaxing and informative. If you did indeed like the video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and also consider leaving a comment below. All feedback is very much welcome. If you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to the channel. It will really help the channel grow and will ensure that you are notified of future videos. Be sure to turn on notifications so that you are notified of future videos as soon as they are posted. Thank you again, and I hope to see you next time.